Oh, Lord, it's been constant.
Here we are with Eddie Lenihan's on the phone right now, and he's going to be joining us online any moment. Yes.
One second now. I'll try to log into Zoom if I can.
Yeah, try and log into Zoom there.
1 minute now. Hold on.
Genius.
The computer, I turn off this goddamn television.
Shanachie.
Turn off the news. It's bad news.
You said it's fucking nuts. The news. Go figure.
No, I have been emailed, so I get out of email, right?
Yeah.
Go on out.
1 second now.
We sent you an email last weekend with the link.
What's wrong? Are you drunk?
No, we're not drunk.
We're excited.
We're excited. No, we sent you an email last weekend with the link to Zoom. So
if you check your emails,
yeah.
Oh, bollocks, I'm just asked to take note of the email. Hold on a second now. What's the date?
Well, I'll have to move to 1 second. I'll have to move to date.
Hold on a second.
The title of the email is "Link for Tuesday's Chat." We sent it 3 days ago.
May 16th, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. We're just waiting on Eddie, folks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm back in my email now. What date can you think of?
May 16th.
It was 3 days ago, yeah.
I'm back into Tuesday, link for Tuesday's chat on the 18th.
That's right.
17th. Right, let's see now. Here's the Zoom link for Tuesday's chat.
Ladies and gentlemen, Eddie Lenihan.
Right.
Any moment now.
Does she have the app?
It's right, let me see now.
Our producer is telling us something.
Okay, Zoom.
Zoom.
In a few seconds.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thanks, Eddie.
All right, okay, I have a picture of myself and you now here.
Grant.
No, I have here join with video, join without video.
Join with video, Eddie. Be great to see your face.
All right, 1 second now. Join with video, okay.
Oh, there you go.
There it is, Eddie Lenihan. Thank you, Eddie. We got you. We're going to hang up now.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you quite clear. Okay, can you see me?
We can
We see you. Thanks for joining us.
No bother.
Podcast.
Welcome. How's the phone?
Okay. Oh no, are we going to be falling in? I can't hear you at all now.
You can't see us?
Can you see us?
I can see you. I can see. No problem now.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah,
Thanks for joining us, Eddie.
Yeah.
How are things?
How are you?
Good.
Okay. Do you want to? Could you explain to us, our audience, what a Seanchai is?
Yeah. What is a Seanchai?
A teller of old stories. A teller of old stories, basically it is. And it comes from the Irish word Seanachas, because the Irish word Sean means old.
Yes.
You'll often maybe you're talking to me from where exactly?
New York City.
Well, now the people in New York City might have heard the word Shanavan. It has almost translated over into English at this stage. Shanavan would be an old woman. People would have heard the Shanavan Vogt, the poor old woman. There's a famous song called the Shanavan Vogt, the poor old woman. And Shan means old. Seanchas means old things, and Seanchai means a teller of old things, of old tales, of old history.
Right. And how far back, like, who was the first ever Seanchai in the history of humankind?
Who was God? Who was Noah? Who was Abraham? It's God only knows. God only knows, because where did old things start?
Right.
It's that kind of a question.
Sure, but like in an Irish context, like who would be like one of the earlier proponents of it?
Well, you see, it depends on. I suppose there's many aspects to Seanchas. It could be old stories. It could be old music. It could be old singing. It could be. It's the entirety of old things in Irish.
Right.
And every culture has that. It could be Japanese, it could be Chinese, it could be Native American. Every culture has their own Seanchas.
Yeah. Yeah. Go on.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, like, just to talk about you, like specifically. So, I believe you're around 70 years of age.
Correct.
Could you tell us about your early days? You were born in Kerry, right? In Brosna?
Right, in Brosna in County Kerry. And by the way, Brosna is an interesting, it's only a small village on the Kerry-Cork-Limerick border, but it's an interesting name because Brosna means firewood, Brosna, and the name of the village is Noc and Brosna because it's a steep-sided hill there, right to where the church is up at the top of the hill, and Malach means the top of the hill, and Malach, because remember, in every place name in Ireland, and I'm always of the children should never leave primary school without knowing place names.
Absolutely.
Because if you know place names, now give me a bit of light there. It'll help. Thanks. Does that help a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Turn on the light.
I thought we thought you were asking her for a cup of tea.
I'll make that later a drop for you too. You might get some of the evaporation of it. But no, in the light, in the place names, you get the notion of what is a place, what does it look like? Because Malacca, Brosna, firewood, there must have been, at the top of the hill, there must have been quite a few trees one time. There's no trees there now, but Malacca and Brosna. And all over Ireland, it's the same thing. If you know Irish, you know something about the place. For example, Raw, R-A-T-H, you know there's a fairy fort there. You know there's a fairy fort. Liss, like a Listowel, a fairy fort there. You see, when the English were dividing up Ireland at the time of the conquest, at the time of Queen Elizabeth especially, they hadn't a clue about the Irish language. No more than white people, when they went to America, had a clue about the Indian names, and they just heard names that they couldn't understand, and they approximated roughly the language they knew to the language they thought they were hearing, and they just wrote down a garbled version of them. Now, if you get an English person coming to Ireland, and they see some of these names, for example, the very obvious one, Cork, the city of Cork. To an English person, Cork means a cork of a bottle. Something you put on a bottle. But if you know Irish, Cork means Corkig, which means a swamp. And if you know the topography of Cork, it floods every so often because Cork is built on swampy ground. And Cork City is flooded regularly. When the high tide and the wrong wind comes, Cork City is regularly flooded because it was built in Corkig Moor na Moon, the great swamp of Munster. So that's why I say children should never leave primary school without being taught Irish in an interesting way. They learn the grammar, Forget about the grammar. Teach them interesting stories about Irish and what it teaches you about a local place.
Yes. Yeah, I think that was probably sorely lacking in my and Dave's education, which is a shame because it's such a beautiful language. But you mentioned fairies there, right? And could you talk to us more about fairies? Like, do you believe they exist? Are they in the air? Are they around places? Are they in?
Well, I was walking my dogs home last night. I walk my dogs every night. Mary has gone off with them now. I have two dogs, a pug and a Tibetan terrier. And they love to be walked late at night. And yesterday, or last evening, I was walking them. I got 3 walks yesterday, but I was bringing them back and I saw the most beautiful thing I've seen in a long time. A shigui, a fairy wind. It's round and round and round and round beside us, a little whirlwind. And the old people always called that a shigui, a fairy wind. And that was the fairies going about their business. And you had better not get in that way of that thing, because if you did, you might come to harm. That was the good people. And remember, the old people didn't call them the fairies. They had many different names for them. They called them the middle people, the other crowd, the good people, the Shioga, the Pochi, the Medina Ushle, Bonachnik, the people of the hills. They had many names, but always keep your distance because they had to be treated with respect.
Right.
There are so many stories about the good people that you interfered with them, it could cost you your life.
Right.
It could cost you your health. But be respectful. Nothing happened. The book I did about them meeting the other crowd, it's now in its 13th edition. And that's what I was doing when you phoned. I was getting out copies, trying to keep up with demand of that book. It's last week it went out of print again, and a new edition. Thanks be to God, the publishers here are great, Gill and Macmillan. They get a new printing out as soon as it goes out of print. But it's now
What's the name of that book?
Meeting the Other Crowd. The other crowd being the fairies.
Right.
So
but you can get it in Japanese. You can get it in Italian. They even use it in Moscow University.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So in popular culture, especially with Walt Disney, fairies are these cute little creatures that have wings and they fly around.
Nonsense.
And of course, can you explain to our audience why that's not accurate?
I know a man. He only died last year. He was 100. I had been visiting him for 27 years, recording him, as I have been doing with the old people for the last 44 years. I had a huge collection of recordings in this house. But he met them, he said. He met them. And I asked him, of course, what do they look like, Mick? I said. And I remember the way that man paused. And he looked at me eventually and he said, the person sitting beside you could be one of them. And you wouldn't know it.
And you wouldn't know it.
Right.
They can take any shape they like. They can take animal shape, they can take human shape, they're shapeshifters. That's what you say there about the Walt Disney thing with the little pointy ears and the wings. Nonsense.
Right.
Complete nonsense.
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you ever had the privilege of having a direct dialogue with a fairy yourself?
No, not dialogue, but I did, I think, meet one of them once in Fleeting Way. And I'll tell you the story briefly. I used to teach one time, and I was going to Limerick. I was teaching in Limerick, and up and down every day, and near Bunratty Castle.
Right.
I was going down one morning, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this huge dog, black, size of a pony, and in the middle of the field, gone. I thought, well, but I had to keep going. I was in traffic. I had to keep going. And when I got to the staff room in school, somebody asked me, "Oh, what's wrong?" And I said, "Look, I'll tell you at break time." And I did. Of course, they laughed. You were on the piss last night. Said I wasn't. I saw what I saw. I saw what I saw. But I looked many times again, and I didn't see the same thing there anymore. But there was an old man that I used to visit in that area. There's quite a few of his stories in the book, Meeting the Other Crowd. A man who really knew his history of all that place. Wonderful man. He's dead since, God bless the man. But we were talking. I used to call to him on my way home from school in the evenings because he wasn't married and he had plenty of time to be talking. But we were talking one evening and that came up in the conversation just by accident. And he told me the story that at that particular place, now it was a big lawn or a small field in front of the house. And he said that back in the 1950s, there was a fairy fort there and the farmer had bulldozed it, which was a very unusual thing because farmers usually don't. But this farmer had bulldozed it. And at that fort, at the mouth of that fort near the road, there used to be this huge black dog. Now, he never did any harm to anybody, and nobody ever did any harm to him because he was huge. He was huge. And there he'd be, watching people going the road outside. Now, that dog had been seen there for maybe 70, 80 years by generation after generation. He was called the Noc and Black Dog because Noc is the name of the place. Now, I had never heard that story before. I saw what I saw. Now, if I had, I'd say, my imagination is playing tricks, but I never had. And I saw what I saw that morning. So, what did I see? I think it was the Noc and Black Dog, because he was no ordinary dog. Right. He was one of the boys watching out for their property. Now, I never heard what happened to that farmer, whether he came to grief or not over what he did to the fort. I should have asked the old man, but I didn't, and he's dead since. But you see, with so many of these old people, it's only afterwards you think of asking the questions that you should have asked. But in any case, I have a big collection here, thousands and thousands of hours of tape and MD, and well, it's something.
Wow.
Right. And can you talk to us about fairy bushes?
Oh, the Skeach.
Skeach.
The Skeach is a lone hawthorn, a white thorn bush. And some of the older people, I suppose the purists, would say that in order to be a true Skeach, it had to be growing 3 branches growing out of the one, what would you say?
Trunk?
Trunk, exactly. 3 main trunks growing out of the one trunk. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but any of the older people who saw that a lone white thorn bush stood alone, they wouldn't interfere with it. And that's the reason why you'll see so many of those bushes standing all around the country in Ireland yet. And even today, with all the modern machinery and all of the progress in Ireland and people, that's only a load of nonsense. You'd be surprised at the number of people who still won't interfere with those. Wow. Because who wants to take a chance? We have enough problems without risking more.
Yeah. So when I was growing up in Ireland, I grew up on a farm, and on May 1st, we used to bless all the fields on the farm, and we bless the cattle and all the animals with holy water. Can you explain why we did that?
That was mainly, well, of course, for good luck.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, also for prosperity, naturally. But also it was maybe against pishogues.
Pishogues.
Pishogues. And the special holy water was May holy water. May holy water was good, and people used to keep May holy water from year to year. Renewed, of course, from one May to another. Easter holy water, I mean.
Yeah.
Easter fell in May. And they keep Easter holy water because that was especially powerful against things like pishogues. And pishogues, they haven't gone away. The pishogues are still there, and they are a dirty business. They would be the Irish equivalent of, we'll say, voodoo of a kind.
Right.
Yes. To take away your luck and put a bad spell on your property and your cattle and your milk. And they're less now because people aren't churning cream at home anymore into butter. But people's luck is still their luck. And if I wanted to put a curse on you and take away your health, we'll say, well, bishops are still there to do that kind of dirty deed. And some people, you see, are just bad-minded.
Yeah.
And people, the one thing we have to remember is people don't change. A Franciscan priest said to me one time when I took one of these pishog bags to him that I had found on May Day, hanging from a tree, a bag of hazel sticks pointed at both ends, 3 hazel sticks pointed at both ends, hanging from a boundary between one man's fence and another. And I took him to a Franciscan priest just to bless them, take the badness out of him, because he was a good man for that kind of thing. But he said to me, after blessing them, he did, but he said to me, look, it's as simple as this. Human nature will always be the same. There's always maybe 60% good and 40% evil in everybody. And you must come to that conclusion and make allowance for it. Nobody is particularly good or nobody is particularly bad. And if you're expecting people to be saints or devils, you're
right.
We are what we are.
Yeah.
And when you see the kind of things that so-called good people do, you sometimes scratch your head. And you can see also the good things that bad people are capable of sometimes.
Yes.
So people are a mixture of good and bad. That's why I love my dogs.
Very good. So, do you think is the coronavirus a pishog? Pishog. Is the coronavirus?
No, I don't think so. But I do believe that if Biddy Early, the famous Biddy Early, was here today, thousands and thousands of people would be going to her for a cure.
Right.
The book I wrote about her, In Search of Biddy Early, talking to old people, some of whose grandparents knew her in person.
Who was she? Was she a saint or something?
No, she was a healing woman, a 19th century healing woman and a clairvoyant. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman, and she helped thousands of people. She lived in Feakle in East Clare, and the book I wrote about her, In Search of Biddy Early, is now in its 9th edition, and it's being translated into Japanese next year. So,
a few pounds for you.
Yeah.
Well, no, but I mean, every what would I say, culture has its healing people as well.
Yeah, brilliant.
Christ was one of those. Christ was one of those who healed people.
Absolutely. Oh, you're right.
And you can't laugh at faith. You can't laugh, because Biddy was one of those people. If you went to her to laugh at her, by God, she would give you the bum's rush out there. And tell you quickly what you were made of. But if you came with faith, no matter whether you had head trouble or disease of the body, you'd probably get a cure. She cured thousands and thousands of people. There's no doubt about it. And believe, for the new edition of the book, I found her death certificate. Finally, because lots of people thought she was just a legend. I found her death cert, and the death cert of one of her 4 husbands. She was married 4 times.
Wow.
She wasn't afraid of the clergy, or she wasn't afraid of the police, or she was afraid of nobody. I tell you, she was a woman before her time, an amazing woman. She died in 1874 and is still remembered today.
Wow.
So she would have lived through the famine.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, God, she did. And by all accounts, she had a tough childhood because her parents died young and seemingly she was put into the workhouse. And you know, if you were put in the workhouse that time, nobody wanted to be put in the workhouse because you got a tough time in the Irish workhouses at the time. To be put in the workhouse meant you had nothing or nobody. But she survived and turned out to be not a bitter woman. No, she helped, and she helped poor people all her life. And thousands of people came to her, including, there's a very, very funny piece. I haven't been able to confirm it, but it tells you the attitude of Irish people towards British royalty. They used to say that a member of the British royal family came to her with a social disease, as they put it.
Social disease. Okay. Okay.
And she cured him.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Well, like storytelling would also be a healing thing that some people would say. Like, when did you begin telling stories? When did you begin your life as a Seanchai? Were you initiated? Did someone train you in the art? No, you're self-taught.
No, not at all. I don't believe in that kind of stuff.
Brilliant.
There's all kinds of college degrees now in going to the toilet mainly.
Yeah, we agree. Yeah.
We agree. We're just
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
So you started
No,
telling stories at a young age, or when you were young?
No, I did my degree in phonetics, my master's degree in phonetics in UCG in Galway, and what I had to do for that is go out listening to people's accents. And quickly I found out, of course, that the stories they were telling me were a lot more interesting than the sound of the precise voices. And when I finished that, I continued collecting the stories because there were amazing stories here. In fact, on the same pattern now as Meeting the Other Crowd, the book I'm working on now is Military Memories. Military Memories. Yes, because some of the oldest of those people, long dead now, of course, because I started collecting back in the 1970s, the first of the people that I collected from, he could remember personally the Boer War. And that was from 1899 to 1902.
Right.
So, his brother was killed in the First World War.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about the famine for our audience and how that's kind of affected the Irish psyche over the generations?
Right.
I'd imagine that, like, seeing all that death and poverty still has an effect on us down the line. Would you agree with that?
If you were to talk to younger generation here now, it's only book knowledge. It's only book knowledge.
Right.
And if you were to talk to the generation behind those now, it's only book knowledge. People go to a plot in the graveyard, the famine plot. But as I say to you, I started collecting the stories back in the 1970s.
Right.
And the oldest generation then, they could remember the famine because their parents were born during the famine or didn't survive the famine, whatever it be. And I remember a lovely story about the famine in West Clare. Now, when I say lovely, was it? Kilrush in West Clare had a workhouse that was very, very, very bad entirely. You know, overcrowded, totally overcrowded, like most of the other workhouses. And in order to bury the dead, because they were dying like flies, they couldn't afford coffins. So the constant story was in most of these workhouses was they had one coffin and a hinged bottom in it, so that they could use it again and again and again and again, but just to give them some sort of little bit of respectability when they were burying them, they put him in the coffin anyway.
Wow.
And then they take him to the pit then, because it was a famine pit, and
Yeah.
they just dump him in, pull the hinge and into the pit where all the other bodies were, and then when there was enough bodies in the pit, they'd just fill it in.
Right.
Now, in Kilrush workhouse, and the big pit was a couple of miles out the road. The man who had the contract for taking the coffins and the bodies to the pit, he died of cholera, because more people died of disease than hunger during the famine, especially cholera, because it was so catching. And he died, and his daughter got the contract. It was very unusual at the time that a woman would get it, but she was a fine, strong, big girl. She got it, and it was a donkey and cat. Donkey and cat they had, for whatever way. And every day she'd go to the workhouse and bring more and more and more. And the one thing that's remembered about her after all that time, 1845, 6, 7, 8, all those years, the 5 years of the famine, is the beautiful voice she had. Right. She'd sit above on the coffin, singing as she took the coffins over to where they were to be buried.
Yeah.
And that's a remarkable thing. That's what is remembered.
Wow.
The lovely voice. But they're the kind of details I got from the old people. You see, the other things you'll get in any newspaper of the time.
Right.
And they all sound the same. Oh, the terrible death. Oh, the terrible death. But the little personal details that make these things personal and that stand out, they're the things that are worth having. For example, I have another thing about a terrible murder from 1839. And they were all caught. They were all caught. The people who committed the murder, and they were hanged publicly, because the British loved that, to hang people publicly and make a big deal out of it as an example to the peasantry. You don't do this. This is what you get for breaking our law. But they were caught anyway, and they were hanged separately within sight of Applevale House was the name of the place. And it still stands today, a spooky old spot when you consider what happened in that yard for a man. Blood was his name. Imagine, so appropriate. The landlord's name was Blood. Yeah, I know. But he put up a terrible struggle, but they beat his brains out, the white boys of the time. But they were caught, and they were all hanged separately within sight of the house. But the old man who told me the story, dead now, he said that for the day, for the big occasion, there were crowds and crowds of people came from all the parishes around to see the spectacle of the hanging. And for a day like that, you see, all these booths would be set up selling whiskey and food and all this, to feed the crowd. It was a big day, like a fair day, these hangings. They were common at the time. They were very common hangings, they were a public spectacle. But anyway, he told me that his great-grandfather came on horseback to see the hanging, and not a single bit of food was sold that day. No whiskey, no poteen, no food, no nothing. People were so disgusted at the hangings that there was nothing sold.
Wow.
And you see, it was 1839, 1939, nearly 170 years later, that man had the story personally from me to record it.
Wow.
There's memory.
Yes.
There's memory.
Yeah.
I say Irish people have a long, long memory for a sense of injustice.
Yes.
For a sense of injustice. All right, the man he was murdered. Nobody denied that. But to hang 4 men just for the sake of we are going to. British justice did terrible things in Ireland, you see.
Right.
British justice did terrible things to people in Ireland to create a sense of terror. They rule by terror.
Wow.
Now, they probably did the same thing in England, the upper class.
Yes.
Because, it was through terror they ruled. But eventually a day had to come when the tide turned, and what I am writing now about military memories, when it came to the time of the Troubles in the 1920, 21, and all of a sudden, the RIC, which were all Irishmen, remember, they started being shot here and there, and then they began to resign en masse from the force. Who had to take over? The Black and Tans.
Yeah.
And then you had chaos. And here we have Ireland today. It's a wonderful feeling in Ireland today to think I can walk up here the street of my own country. It's something.
You can't.
No, it is something. I'm not a rabid nationalist.
Very good.
But it's a nice feeling to think that at 3 o'clock in the morning, I walk out here regularly with my dogs in my own country. And I respect the men and women who fought for that.
Right.
Because no, I don't. The other side was true too. The RIC men, because I had relations in the RIC, they were decent men too. A lot of those, they were just doing a job. But it's a sad history we have here in Ireland.
Right.
It's a sad history in many ways, but it's a great thing to know that you are in your own country and that you can live in your own country at peace now.
Okay. Can I go back to the famine again? In school we were told that it was about potatoes, and that the potato crop failed because of blight, and that's why everybody starved. Is that true?
There's a lot of truth in it. The potato is a great crop. It's very filling. You live on potatoes.
Right.
You live on potatoes alone. But the whole political system was wrong, and the whole landlord system was wrong. Because the landlord system, what would I say? You could be evicted at the will of the landlord's agent. Because remember, many of the landlords, they didn't live in Ireland at all. They lived in London.
Right.
It was their agent was left to get on with the job here in Ireland of providing his master in London with as much rent as possible to keep him going in London.
Yeah.
So what he did was he squeezed as much out of the tenants as possible.
Yeah.
Keep as many of them on that estate as possible in as small a plot as possible. Now, the potato is great for doing that, because in a little plot you can grow a lot of spuds, but if anything goes wrong, you have nothing to fall back on. And they hadn't.
Right.
And they grew the worst possible kind of potatoes. They were called lumpers. And when blight struck those, they rotted, and the people had nothing to fall back on at all. And you see, the potatoes, they encourage big families, because the more you can feel secure. Well, the bigger a family you have, probably. And remember, there was no place to go that time, because you wouldn't have the price of going to America. They didn't want you in England. You had to stay at home, and there was no big deal about having a family of 10 children that time.
Right.
And the church would probably be delighted. You had more souls for God. So, the notion was big families, small plot of ground, big rent, relatively speaking, everything on a knife edge, until something went wrong. All of a sudden, it did go wrong, and when something went wrong, everything went wrong. And that's what happened.
So are you saying that most Irish peasants were vegetarians and vegans?
They had to be.
Wow.
Right.
They had to be. Where would they go to get the price?
Go ahead.
Well, they might have a pig, but the pig was to pay the rent. The pig was to pay the rent.
Right.
Cattle were beyond them.
Cattle were beyond them. Yeah.
Oh, where would they put a cow? Because they might be subsisting on a half an acre.
Right.
A pig, you see, a pig once again is a wonderful animal, because a pig will subsist on scraps.
Yeah. So I guess when the crop failed, people just starved. Then they had no access to food, and the British didn't really help out at all.
Well, it wasn't that the British didn't help out; they didn't understand. They couldn't understand, and it wasn't even that. You had this laissez-faire mentality at the time, and these God-fearing men in government that said, well, Catholics are lazy, Catholics have too many children, Catholics are, I won't say dirty, but Catholics, they should be helping themselves. They didn't understand, and they were very parsimonious and grudging in their, it was, I hate to say, a Protestant kind of way of looking at life. It was an extreme way of looking at life. Why should we pay you for existing? Do it yourself. To be a kind of an American way of, well, why don't you get a second job? But there were no jobs in Ireland. There were no jobs. It was a city man's view of a place where he had never put foot.
Right.
And the English, Ireland was supposed to be part of Britain, the union of England and Ireland since 1800. Most English politicians didn't know where Ireland was. Just like today, the Brexit thing showed it up very clearly again. Most people in the British Parliament hadn't a clue where Northern Ireland was, and don't yet.
Yeah.
They haven't a notion where, and they don't care. It's a problem over there, and that's exactly the way Ireland was during the famine.
Right.
And the help given was very grudging indeed. They solved it, they thought, by opening workhouses. And when you look at the help that was given in workhouses, it was meager. And to this very day, you mention, even to people who know nothing about the famine, mention the workhouse, and immediately you'll get Irish people's back up. To end up in the workhouse meant you were the lowest of the low, and you had no place else to go.
Right. And can you describe a workhouse for us?
The workhouse, it was the poorhouse. The poorhouse was the workhouse. That's what it was. You got hardly enough to live and hardly enough to die in the food. It kept you hardly alive and barely between the two.
Yeah.
Hardly alive and hardly dead.
And who ran the workhouse?
Oh, the master, so-called, the master. Now, that being said, there were a lot of great masters who were heartbroken to see what they had to do. Because, you see, the workhouses were, we'll say, if there was a workhouse, for example, Kilrush, I think it was built to house 5,000 people, we'll say. And there were 20,000 trying to get into it eventually. Oh, the very fact that people were trying to get into a workhouse will tell you how dire conditions were outside.
Right.
How awful. It was like one of those famines out in, we'll say, Bangladesh, or some one of the terrible places that sometimes famines have happened in.
Yes.
In recent decades. Terrible things that have happened.
Yeah.
Awful, beyond words. But that's the way things happened during the famine in Ireland.
Yes.
Now, some of the people who tried to help in England, and they should never ever be forgotten, were the Quakers.
Right.
They did work, wonderful people, and it shouldn't be forgotten also. And of recent times, it was returned the favour, and great that it was remembered. The Choctaw tribe in America.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You've heard of them.
We've seen that story in the media lately. Yeah. It's been doing the rounds.
And they collected, and they were suffering too.
Right.
They were suffering at that. The Native Americans were suffering at the hands of white people at that time in the middle of the 19th century, and they put their hands together and collected. It wasn't much, we'll say, by our standards, a couple of £1,000, but it was a lot of money for poor people. And it was good to see that Irish people collected now in the COVID-19 thing and sent some money to them to do something with.
Fair play, absolutely. Could you talk a bit more about great historical Irish women? Because I know you've written a bit, I believe, on them. Like,
now, can you pause a minute? I just need to my throat get a glass of water.
Oh, absolutely,
No
yeah. Yes.
Thank you, Eddie.
Yeah, one moment.
No.
Eddie Lenihan.
Eddie Lenihan, folks. What a fascinating human being.
I hope the audio is going to be okay on this. If the audio is difficult, we will add subtitles on YouTube, you guys.
We will indeed. This is educating you on what a real Irish life is like.
Eddie Lenihan coming to you live from Ireland.
Real Ireland.
Yes, real Ireland.
Yeah.
Well, Ed, what do you think so far?
I'm really enjoying this. It's educational for me, and I know it's educational for you.
Yes. Our producer is looking at us.
Neutral.
Yeah, condescending.
Okay.
He's back.
All right.
Welcome back, Eddie. Yeah, I was just wondering about historical Irish women. Like, if you could educate our viewers on some of the greats.
Well, no. Look,
And maybe compare historical Irish women to the modern women.
Defiant
Irish women. Wow. There you go.
Well, there have been many, and there have been Mara Rua in Clare, great Red Mary McMahon. There have been Lady Betty, the Roscommon hangwoman.
She sounds great.
Yeah. I tell you, there has been Alice Kittler, of course, you know, the Kilkenny witch. And well, there have been, Mary Shaughnessy, the spirit of Byrne, except she wasn't a spirit, she was a real woman who murdered her husband. And there have been more. There have been quite a number more. And Grace O'Malley, Gráinne Mhaol, of course, the pirate queen, who it was said about her that she went to visit Queen Elizabeth I, and that they got on famously entirely. Now, we don't know whether that's true or not, but legend has it. And she was a tough woman, it seems. They said that she was a pirate. She had definitely galleys, ships of her own, and her castle is still there in Clare Island in Clew Bay. So she was a real person. The only thing about her is you'll often see pictures of her with the flowing red hair, romantic, of course, because once again, as we started this program, if you know you're Irish, Gráinne Mhaol is Gráinne means grace, of course. She was Grace O'Malley, Gráinne. Gráinne Mhaol, Mhaol means bald.
She was bald, was she?
Bald.
Right.
But bald means shaven.
Right. She shaved her head.
Why? Of course, she was a sailor. Why would a sailor have long, flowing hair? It would be, impractical thing. So obviously, like any sailor, she would have closely clipped hair, and that's, I'm sure, where she got the name Gráinne Mhaol.
Okay, so she was like Sinead O'Connor.
Well, something probably, I don't know, was Gráinne Mhaol a Buddhist or not, but or a priest or a singer or a what, or we don't know.
Yeah. So what kind of things did she do? What did she fight against? Like, what was she defiant?
I think she took a toll on whatever passed her way there in Clew Bay. And I'd say she would have been probably a very hard one to catch because, as you know, Clew Bay is full of islands. And they say there's about 100 islands in Clew Bay. I'm sure there aren't. But if you look from Croagh down onto Clew Bay, it's the most beautiful sight because of all the islands that are there. I think there's only one of them inhabited now. But there was a time when most of those were inhabited up to pretty recently. And well, you can imagine any ship English ship, especially coming in there, trying to take their chance, because the inner reaches of that bay are very shallow and sandy. Imagine British, English that time, English ships coming in there, taking a chance. That'd be easy prey for the likes of her, because she knew that place like the back of her hand. And she had a galleys, and galleys are pretty shallow draft. So how was an English ship going to come in there and have a chance against her? So and she knew her stuff, and by all accounts, she lived out a natural life.
Right.
If it's true that she went as far as London to meet Queen Elizabeth, and perhaps there is some truth in it. Imagine the feat of seamanship that must have been, to go from there all around the south of Ireland, all around the south of England, and up the Thames. That was something in those days. When you consider that the Spanish Armada was wrecked in 1588, coming into Ireland with bigger ships and much more powerful ships. She was some woman. Had to be some woman.
Brilliant. Tell us more about Betty the Hangwoman.
She was a Kerry woman.
Right.
She was a Kerry woman who ended up in Roscommon through very, very tragic circumstances. Murdered her own son by mistake.
By mistake?
By terrible mistake.
Right.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, yeah.
Don't know, but
did she drop him on his head or what?
No. He went away and came back a rich man, and she didn't really recognize that it was the son. Killed him for his money, but was conscious. No, when she did find out, of course, was horror-stricken that it was him, and she was due to be hanged in Roscommon, but on the day the hangman took sick, and she, quick-witted, noticed that, well, look, we'll make a bargain, she said, with the governor of the jail, that if you help me, I'll perform the job. There was 2 or 3 others to be hanged on the same day. If you promote me to the job, I'll do the job that he should have been doing. And of course, the governor thought, a woman do it. So he said, right, madam, go ahead. He was thinking, there was a beam protruding from the wall, but she did it. She did it. Anything to escape justice, did it, and did a mighty good job. And the governor was so impressed that after that, the man that was in charge lost his job, and she became the new hangwoman, and so good at the job that eventually, before this, used to hold the hangings in public in the square, but eventually they had to move them inside the jail because she became such a reviled figure. She was taking such pleasure now in the job that they had to move the hangings inside the jail for her own safety. And she got a special cell or housing inside the jail where she lived more or less for the rest of her life, which made her all the more efficient at the job. And she lived there until she died, but causing terror, because anybody who committed any crime in Roscommon, they knew where they were headed. And they said afterwards that the rate of serious crime in Roscommon, it went down by comparison with all the counties around. When she was in charge after that, since people knew exactly what they were headed for, the crime rate in Roscommon went down. So,
yeah,
an interesting woman, to say the least.
Eddie, in these modern times, is there a demand out there for Irish storytelling or oral storytelling?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I could be gone 7 days a week if I wished. The only thing is, the writing of books takes a lot of time clear in front of you.
Yes.
Right. I have 4 books now that I am engaged in. and you need time for that.
Yes.
I don't do tours of America anymore, for example.
That's unfortunate.
Well, I discovered I would do individual things.
Are you barred from America?
No,
You're
not at all.
Good.
Okay.
I have been in 40 of the 50 states telling stories, and I always enjoyed them because I met some of the nicest of nice people in America. But I found that, people were coming here, and I was going to tour groups, dealing with tour groups from America here. So look, why would you be traveling? And I found that America, it wears you out.
Yes.
It wears you out. At the end of the tour in America, you're just shattered. And look, as you said at the start, I'm 70. Who needs that?
Right.
Who needs that?
Yeah.
At the end of a year. And as well as that, the revenue commissioners, they take half of what you earn.
Really? Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
The phone.
Oh,
Pause me again for a moment.
okay.
One second there.
That's Eddie Lenihan,
Eddie
ladies
Lenihan,
and gentlemen.
folks.
The revenue commissioners take everything. Take half, is it?
Take half.
Who are these people?
Who are these people?
Yeah. Take half of your.
Of course, this will be nothing new to some of our viewers, and
Yeah.
I mean it's an ongoing.
Is he talking about the Irish revenue commissioners?
Or is it a
Or is he
universal?
talking about the IRS, the Internal Revenue Service?
It could be you.
They're taking all our money.
Taking it all.
Bastards.
Support artists.
Yeah. Support artists. Eddie's on the phone, and I think my next question for Eddie, I want to talk about.
He's back right now.
Yeah. You're back.
Right, sorry about that.
No problem. So you're probably the most well-known Seanchai right now. I guess.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, the first Seanchai I was ever introduced to was Eamon Kelly.
Me too.
Yes, Eamon Kelly.
And I guess he was more famous back in the day. Did you ever have any interactions with Eamon or?
I met him once.
Right. Yeah. I guess he's from the same part of Kerry. Is he a close?
He was from Rathmore.
Rathmore. Okay, Rathmore.
Down south, down further south. I'm from, as I said, Brosna is just where Kerry, Cork and Limerick meet. There's Brosna, Kerry, Mount Collins across the way in County Limerick. That's where my father comes from. And Rock Chapel is in County Cork, about 3 miles on the Cork side.
Yeah. I guess his stories were a little different to yours because his were more kind of, I guess, they were less folkloric and less talk about fairies and spirits. He told more stories. Go ahead.
His funny stories. They were nearly all funny. Well, he knew his business because he was, I think he was a woodwork teacher. Yeah. So he knew his, anything that he told about tended to be genuine, all right, and he knew his business. Of course, he was an Abbey actor for years and years.
Yes.
In the Abbey Theatre.
Yeah. So is that a Kerry thing, Seanchai? Is there a lot of Seanchais from Kerry?
Nowadays, there's a lot of people imitating Eamon Kelly.
Right.
Which I think is a pity, because Eamon Kelly was, to my mind, you should be yourself.
Yes.
You should be yourself. And the question that you asked at the very start, what is a Seanchai? What is Seanchai? This is a thing I don't think you can learn from a college course, or I don't think it's a thing you can learn overnight. It's a thing that's built up gradually and gradually and gradually, and people should be different. Yeah. I couldn't be you. You couldn't be me. Yeah. I hope. Right. It would be a pity if we were all the same, because then you could turn out Seanchais on a production line. And if that's the case, well then, who's interested?
Right. Yeah. But is it fair to say you kind of have to be captivating, because you need, or else the audience will be bored. Like you need a certain presence it's a performance quality. Would you agree with that? Like there's a performance presence that,
Absolutely, that has to be true. It must be true, because if the audience isn't interested, well, why bother? Right. But what makes an audience interested? There is the secret, I suppose.
Absolutely,
it shouldn't be any secret. It shouldn't be a secret, but you'll quickly find out whether an audience is interested or not, because if they're not, they won't come, or if they're not, they'll just walk away, which is fair enough.
Exactly. Speaking of audiences, like I think the most honest audience of all is a child. And like, is it true that you've done some children's storytelling too, or is that more for books, or have you actually like?
Oh no! I visit schools. I visit schools constantly because the Arts Council has a wonderful scheme here. It's called Writers in Schools.
Okay.
And it's for all schools, of course. But it makes sure that little country schools do get a visit too from artists. No, it could be a poet, or a storyteller, or a painter, or whoever. But the little schools, you see, tend to get nothing because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Big schools tend to get everything. But this makes sure that everybody is treated the same. There's a special fee, a fixed fee. The school pays half, Arts Council pays half, and they pay all of the travelling fees. And that's a great scheme.
Mm-hmm.
That's a scheme that works the same for everybody, and I think it's money well spent. Very well spent.
That's great.
Yeah. I have a question for you now. As a member of the diaspora, we're both members of the Irish diaspora. I've been living in the States for 20 years. How are things back in Ireland now? Are you hopeful and optimistic about the future of Irish culture?
Yeah. What do you think of the modern Ireland? Yeah.
Well, storytelling has always been the poor relation.
Right.
It's never mentioned in the media, ever.
Right.
It's hardly ever in the newspapers, occasionally. But RTE, for example, shame on them. They never, ever mention it. It's looked on, as I say, as the poor relation, as if it's something to be ashamed of. But I think part of the reason for that, you see, television is a stupid medium because it's little slots. 10 minutes is too much. And it's half an hour, because many of the stories I would know would say might be an hour long. Do imagine a television program giving 1 hour to a story? Unheard of.
Right.
They would say, I remember Gay Byrne said to me one time, I think your stories are interminably long.
Wow.
I felt very much like saying, Gay, I think your career is interminably long. Well, that's what I thought. I didn't say it, and God rest the man now, but that's what I felt like. That's what I felt like, but that's what he said to me. I think your stories are interminably long.
Wow.
Spoken like a real television person, because the Late Show, and it's like they give you 10 minutes slot, 10 minutes slot, 10 minutes slot, and then one for everybody in the audience. It's advertising.
Did you give a book to everybody in the audience? Did you give away your book to everybody in the audience?
I wasn't there. There.
Right.
I just met him in the corridor, I think, or something. But it's not a medium really for the kind of longer stories, especially. But I tell you, I remember the series I did through one particularly insightful man. He was a wonderful producer. Back in the 1980s, when I did those 3 series, and people come up to me today and mention those yet.
Yes.
Storyteller, and 10-minute tales. 30 years later, they remember them.
I remember seeing you on RTE back in the 1980s. Yeah.
That's right. They are the series. Yeah. And I could do those so cheaply today. All you need is somebody to tell the story, and a table and a cup of tea. That's all we had then.
Right.
That's all we had. That's all you need, because anything else is only a distraction.
Yes.
You mentioned. Sorry, go ahead. Excuse me.
But the most recent series I did, would you believe, was for Chinese state television.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, Chinese television, because it was a series of Irish animal stories, because the Chinese are big into their animal, the year of the monkey, the year of the cow, the year of the tiger, the year of the, and I did this, they asked me to do.
They like their bat soup as well.
Bat soup, allegedly.
Well, whatever, but they asked me to do a series of animal stories, and I did that, and wonderful people to work for, wonderful people to work for.
Right.
They sent me a transcript of it afterwards. Now I couldn't understand the transcript, but it was great and funny.
Very good.
My book, Irish Tales of Mystery and Magic, has been translated into Chinese since. So one way or another, it's funny. They're going east because they're being translated into Japanese and Chinese.
Wow.
That's a sad thing. They have out there maybe more interest in our culture than we have here.
Wow.
Isn't that so?
Yeah.
Wow.
But I guess Irish culture is Irish people are more interested in pop culture now, right?
Or American culture, isn't it?
Yeah. It has been said that we're the 51st state of the Union.
Wow.
That is not nice to say, but it's true.
Well, welcome to America, Eddie.
How cool man, cool dude.
but like, all joking aside, you mentioned earlier, like, it's great to be able to walk in your own country these days, but with what's going on,
as long as we have it.
Yeah, indeed, as long as that. But with everything that's going on right now, like, when you go for a walk, is there anyone shouting and roaring at you to put on a mask or anything like that, or like, is there pressure regarding this situation, like to obey the situation?
We've had very sensible medical advice here every day. We have a good sensible Dr. Holohan, the chief medical officer. They sit down every evening, tell the number of deaths, tell the number of new cases, and they've advised about masks on public transport. But they say there'll be no forcing, because the masks can be good or might be bad.
Right.
They can get infected. So they leave it to people's own choice, but there are certain people they don't suit, such as people with autism, people with other problems. So they leave it to people's common sense.
Brilliant. And I suppose your beard is a brilliant mask,
Well, they say that people with beards like this, masks might not suit.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're grand.
That's
brilliant. So you're grand. Everything.
I think so. I'm just.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Nice one.
Eddie, thanks for coming on.
That was great, Eddie.
The Dave and Ed podcast.
Thanks so much. We learned a lot. We learned a lot.
No bother, and please do tell people about the books that are available and where they are available.
Yeah.
We will, absolutely.
And hopefully we'll talk again sometime.
Yeah, we'd love to check in.
And thank you.
Yes.
Thank you from Anach Show, August and Green, kind of clever me.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant.
Do you want to plug your website?
Yeah, plug the book and the website one more time. Yeah.
The various books, be the early, Meeting the Other Crowd, Defiant Irish Women. There's a whole series of them. And, excuse me, my email is eddielenihan1@gmail.com. And my website is www.eddielenihan.net.
.net.
Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie. Great stuff.
Much obliged.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Good luck.
Thank you indeed.
Good night. Bye. End meeting.